fellow senators, I came here today to make a few remarks regarding the vote that we're about to have in about a half an hour on the so-called stimulus package. I think that everyone who is a member of this body agrees with the magnitude of the problem. I've heard my colleagues on the other side and my colleagues on this side speak with great clarity and sometimes with great passion about this problem. Clearly, the American economy is in dire straits. Everyone agrees to that. The amount of passion that one speaks with neither raises that nor lowers that level. I heard the President of the United States last night say that there were some people that thought that there should be no action taken by our federal government. I'm not aware of those people. I'm sure there are some around, but I think that most people agree that the government of the United States, as its main responsibility, is to protect its people, but closely behind that is to regulate monetary policy and economic policy. Nations have been doing both of those for many, many years. My problem with the discussion that we've had over recent weeks has been with the focus of the solution. And I believe that the focus is really misfocused. The President agrees, we agree, most economists agree that this will take a three-path solution towards economic recovery. The first is attention to the banking sector, and that really comprises two different parts. Number one is continued viability of our banking system, and secondly, and most importantly, reestablishing credit flow, which is badly impaired at this time. The second path is the housing sector. Most economists agree that it was the housing sector that led us into this difficulty, and it's going to be the housing sector that leads us out, or if does not lead us out, at least has to recover before we will see any decent movement in the economy. And thirdly is the government expenditure item. That particular item has received all the ink, all the publicity, and all the discussion in recent weeks. The focus should not be on government spending. The focus of the solution should be on credit flow and on the housing market, and it's not. To that, I object. When the President very kindly came into the Republican conference, we had a spirited discussion on these matters. I was delighted to see that he agreed that it was going to take a three-path solution to get us out of this. I was disappointed that his enthusiasm continued to be for the spending side, which of course is a very easy thing to do, and which something this town is particularly adept at. Again, my problem is the focus. Spending by the government is not going to resolve this problem. This proposal has some job creation in it, this so-called stimulus package. And for that, I'm grateful. The best example of that is roads and bridges. However, if you take a percentage of the amount of money we're talking about, that is only about 3% of the bill. There are lots of parts of this bill that do not do anything to stimulate the economy. I'm not going to spend time on that this morning. They've been well publicized, and I have no doubt will be publicized more in the future. The other difficulty with the bill is if you take the number of jobs that the President is attempting to create or to protect, the cost is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per job. That, as much as anything, shows how difficult it is for the government to get us out of this by spending. It is a really futile effort. We have between 7 and 8% unemployment in this country, which means over 92% of Americans are employed. What happens if unemployment continues to accelerate? The federal government cannot borrow nor print enough money to salvage all those jobs at the cost of several $100,000 per job. The federal government simply can't do it. Now, there is an entity that can do it. There is an entity that can create enough jobs and protect enough jobs. That entity is called the free market system. It is entrepreneurs, it is risk takers, it is capitalists. Those people and those entities created these jobs to begin with. They can do it again. Though that entity, the free market system, has created the most successful culture in the history of the world. For the free market system to operate, there must be free-flowing credit. And of course, that does depend upon government policy. And that's why I come down on the side that we need to focus more on that particular aspect of this problem. I listened to the president last night, and he talked about the $800 billion number. And he said he did not just reach up in the air and pull that number out of the air. I wish I knew where that number came from. I have yet to see the formula that was devised either by the president or more likely his advisors that came up with this $800 billion figure. Indeed, that formula has a lot of value. If that formula could be put on paper, every economy in the world, every country in the world would be very interested in that valuable commodity. Because if indeed you can simply take that formula and come up with a number and then borrow enough money and spend that money and get the economy moving again, this is very, very simple. Here's the problem with all of this. That $800 billion number, or whatever number it turns out to be, and of course when you add interest in it, it'll be well over $1 trillion, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 trillion. That money has got to come from somewhere. It is not free money. The way America is going to get that money is they're going to go out and borrow it. And we all know what happens when America goes out and borrows money. Who provides us with that money? The major contributor of purchasing our debt is the Chinese government and the Chinese people. There is no plan for repayment of that debt. What business in America, what entity in America would think of borrowing any amount, let alone the amount of this size, without a clear, cogent plan for repaying that money? Keynesian economics teaches us that we can spend our way out of a problem. Keynesian economics has been proven over and over again to be a great theory, a wonderful theory, a source of hope, but it has been a total failure. It didn't work for the Japanese in the 90s. It didn't work for this country back in the Great Depression, and it didn't even work last year when everyone was given $600. It didn't even put a blip on the screen of trying to get us back to prosperity. Keynesian economics, government spending to get us back on track, has never worked before, and it will not work again. If it does work, it'll be the first time in history, and it will defy uniform history that has shown us in the past that it won't work. I hope that when we go home at Thanksgiving time, this economy is moving in a different direction. I truly hope that's the case. And I hope we can be arguing on this floor whether it was this enormous spending package that did it, or whether it was just the vagaries of an undulating world economy, or whether it was economic policy dealing with the banking sector and the housing sector that turned it around. I'm also encouraged by the fact that the president has committed that he will turn his attention to the other two paths in this three-path system, the banking sector and the housing sector, after this package is passed. The title of this bill, the economic stimulus bill, is truly a giant fraud on the American people. It is not a stimulus package. It is a giant spending package. Admittedly, there are parts of it that one could argue are stimulus, but it is so de minimis that one cannot call this an economic stimulus package. Like everyone on this floor, I'm concerned about the future of our children and our grandchildren. By borrowing $800 billion plus, mostly from the Chinese government and Chinese people, and indenturing our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren to work to repay the Chinese government and the Chinese people, just so we can spend that money today, I believe is fundamentally wrong. I don't believe that we should indenture future generations of Americans, and for that reason, this senator will be casting his vote no on behalf of the people of the great state of Idaho. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Republican